Hi, Ian King here, hope you're well. Now today's video is the fourth and final lesson in this Soul and R&B series for bass players. And we're finishing on a great track, Silk Sonic's Leave the Door Open from their 2021 album An Evening with Silk Sonic, and featuring the multi-talented Chris Brody-Brown on bass. Over the last 3 lessons, we've built things up step by step, starting with diatonic harmony and triads, and then adding 7th chords and slash chords, and more recently looking at secondary dominance and gospel-style chord movement. Now, starting with diatonic harmony is great because we learn the rules of how chords work in a particular key. It gives you the fundamentals, and that's great for creating a fairly safe and predictable sound. But what I love about a lot of soul and R&B music is that it takes you on a more interesting, less predictable journey outside of the key. And today's track is a great example of this, with a gorgeous chord progression and lush extended chords. It's a perfect example of a modern take on an old school Philadelphia sound. In this lesson, we'll play through the full track, we'll home in on some cool embellishments and fills that I'd love to show you, and you can steal them and chuck them into your own lines. And then finally, we'll break down the sophisticated harmony. It's so cool, I can't wait to show you. Now, as ever, I'm putting together a transcription and backing track bundle to go with this series. So if you'd like your own copy, click on that link below and I'll send them directly to your inbox. Now, before we get into it, we need to learn the bass line itself. So let's check it out. fantastic song. Now, for a song like this, we want to reinforce the mood and feel of the song by keeping those note lengths nice and full and creating a warm sound on the bass. So let's look at how we should approach this. Now, generally, you can see from the playthrough that I'm trying to choose positions which are higher up on the neck and using the lower strings. And also, with my plucking hand, I'm plucking a bit further up towards the neck too. And you can hear a big difference if I play an F down on the 3rd fret of the D string and I pluck it further back towards the bridge, we get this sort of sound. Very immediate, quite trebly, kind of punchy. You know that kind of sound, you'd maybe use that for more of a funky, faster paced thing. But for this song, I want sort of big, warm, bassy notes. So I would choose an F on the 8th fret of the A string, and you can see I'd bring my hand forward and just pluck the notes there. You know. That kind of thing, and you can hear it makes a big difference to the sound. Okay, let's look at the verse and check our positioning for that. And like I say, I'm going to find some F's 8th fret of the A string. I might start with just 1st finger on that note, so this sort of thing. And I'm thinking note lengths, you know. And then maybe 3rd finger, 1st finger down to the E. Move that 1st finger down to the E, so 3, 1, 1. And then I'm going to go down to the A with the 1st finger on the 5th fret of the E string. And I'm going to go 1, 3, 4, because I'm trying to get this way all the time, so then move that 4 up. Now I'm going to stay using my 4th finger on the Fs, and there's a reason for that. So we've got bar 10, and then 11. Now I'm going to go up a string and go 1, 3, 1, down to 4, 3, onto that E. Now I'm going to move down to this A again, but again I'm going to try and use my 4th finger. I do this a lot because this is going to work nicely. We're going to go 4 up to 1, 2. So let's just recap the verse. I'm going to start with my 1st finger on the F, 8th fret. Three, 1, 1. Move the 1 down. 1, 1, 1, 3, 4. Move the 4 up. Rest. And then move up. 1, 3, 1, 4, 3. Then move your 4 down. 4, 1, 2. 4, 1, 2. Now similarly, if we jump to the chorus for a second, you'll see how I'm still preferring those high positions on the low strings to make it sound bassy and warm. So I have to play the 1st note down on the 1st fret because that's the only low F we've got. But immediately I'm going to come up to this high 8th fret of the A string. So I'm going to go rest and stay there for a bit. 7th fret for the E, down to 5th fret for the A. And then moving down to F, and then G. Now there's a couple of slides written on the transcription. Now what's the kind of the cool sound to do here is to start on the top string as high as you can, get about halfway down, and then sort of restate that slide on the next string down, and finish it off on the D string. So we've got into the next note, which is a C. That's kind of how that works. We're not just sliding on one string. We're going, and it kind of, in the context, it sounds really cool to do that. And the last couple of bars, we have a C, so C to G and back. And then I'm going to move my 1st finger up to the G. So this is that kind of efficient shifting thing that we talked about in the last lesson. I've started here, 1 to 3 and back, but then I'm going to shift my 1st finger up to that G, so I can go 1 down to 3 on the E, and my 1 will land on the A on the E string, leaving me able to play the 1, 2, 3 up to the octave, and then move the 3 down and back. So the last bar is. Now there are a few key moments in this bass part that I want to highlight, so let's have a look at those now. Now in the 2nd verse, Chris plays some subtle staccato octaves, which works just so well to lift the line at that moment. So if we look at the transcription again, we look at bar 26, which is the second verse. Now we're going to find the F on the 8th fret of the A string again, with the octave F on the G string, 10th fret of the G string. Now, rather than just letting these notes ring out, kind of, Chris obviously wants a sort of clipped top note. He wants that staccato, that short top note. So what we do is we pluck the low F, pluck the top note, but immediately use your alternate finger to mute the string. So if you pluck with your first finger, mute it with the second finger. So to finish that second verse, we've got some stabs. So we start on E, and we're going to play on beat 2 and the and of 3. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we move down to A, and we play on the and of 1 and beat 2. So and 2, and then a rest on beat 3, and we finish like we normally do. A, B, C. So it's going to go 3, 4. Now the first bar of the next pre-chorus is worth mentioning. This is bar 34 on the transcription. Now we've just moved to an E flat chord here, and I love how he jumps from the E flat, 6th fret of the A string. He jumps from that up to the 5th, and then up to the 9th. And then he plays this nice melodic run of the major 7, the octave, and the 9th, back down to the 5th. So we've got... And then he uses the major 7th and the 5th of the A flat chord that we're about to move to on the way down. So we have this. Now if we move on to the bridge for a second, if we look at bar 46 onwards, it feels like we've been visited by James Jamerson for a moment, with some lovely root 5th octave shapes, lots of chromatic passing notes, and even a cheeky 10th in at one point. Now if we look at bar 46, we start off with those root 5th octave shapes. So then move down a semitone to G, and move from the high G to the low G. Now this bar 48 is worth looking at. This is a sort of classic kind of Motown shape. What's happening here is we're kind of using the pentatonic shape that we already know. So think of the A flat major pentatonic, which would be 2, 4, up to 1, 4, 1, 4 again. So that kind of pentatonic thing. We're using that as our framework, but we're preceding some of the notes sort of chromatically from one note chromatically lower. So what I mean by that is we're going to go 2, up to 1, up to 1, move back down to the 3 into 4, and move back up to 3 into 4. So you can see how we're kind of moving into some of these sort of chord tone notes. So, and then root 5th octave, that kind of thing. Another G chord going backwards. Now we move down to G flat, but this time we've got that lovely 10th note that we talked about. So I'm going to find G flat 2nd fret on the E string, play the 5th, and then I'm going to move up to the 3rd fret on the top string, and that's that 10th sound. So there's lots of root 5th octaves, but the occasional extra thing like this 10th. So then down to an F, then E flat on the 6th fret of the A string, F, G flat into A flat, and then stop it dead, nice and short on the second beat of that last bar. So let's just listen to the bridge one more time, nice and slow. So we've got this 3, 4. Now as the choruses continue, the line gets busier with lots of chord tones and chromaticism, but there's one particular feel I love in bar 64 in the outro, so let's have a look at that. So if we look at bar 64, we're actually doing that same shape that we just talked about from A flat, but we're moving up a string to D flat. So I'm going to go 2 on the D flat, up to 1 again, back down to 3, 4, back up to 3, 4. So you can recognize that from the A flat fill we've got. But he finishes it beautifully by moving up to the 3rd in the 2nd octave. He's going to chromatically walk up to that. So what we're doing is we're going to go move up a tone and do chromatic 1, 2, 3. So we've got this. And to finish, we're moving into a B flat chord. So he uses the chord tones there. He uses B flat, then the 7th with his 1st finger, down to the 5th. So we've got this. Equally, the fill at bar 70 is worth a look too. Now what's happened is in the bar before, bar 69, we've been playing on B flat. And we're moving to A natural. Now we could have just decided to move back down to the root on the 5th fret of the E string, which would have been a kind of an obvious thing to do. But what he's actually done is he's moved up to the 3rd in the 2nd octave, really high. I've tabbed it out here on the 11th fret of the D string. And we're actually going to play the first 3 notes of the major scale backwards. So we've been moving from B flat. It does that. So I would probably go 3rd finger, slide it down 2 frets, and then hit the next note with my 1. And from there, we're using a root 5th octave shape backwards. So the whole thing would be this, from bar 69, 2, 3, 4. Some super cool fills there. Now, when you're reading this transcription, if any of the syncopated rhythms feel particularly tricky, try them without the ties to start with, nice and slow, and then put the ties back in as you speed things up again. It's miraculous how much this will help. Now let's take an example. If I look at something like bar 68 in this chart, if I take the ties away, now those little lines that join the notes together, you can just see all the groupings of one crotchet or one quarter note. So bar 68 without any ties in would be this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, we'd have 2, 3, 4. Now, if I put the ties back in, we can still hear the groupings, but we've got the syncopation how it should be now. So let's do it. So 2, 3, 4. Super cool. Now, we talked about reading tricky syncopated rhythms in lesson 3 of the series, so make sure you checked out that too. Okay, let's get into the harmony side of things. Now, at the start of this song, we're in the key of C, but something interesting is happening harmonically. You'll hear the bass plays an F under an F major 7 chord, then F again with a G chord above it, then E under an E minor 7, and finally A under an A minor 7. Now I just love how this song starts because we don't really state what key we're in. We don't even hear a C chord.
What you doing? What you doing? Where you at? Where you at? Oh, you got plans. You got plans. Don't say that. Shut your trap. I'm sipping wine. In a robe. I look too good to be alone. My house clean.
Now if we think of these chords in relation to C major, what we're actually doing is we're playing the 4 chord to start with, the F major 7. Then it moves to a G, but with an F in the bass. So we're moving to the 5 chord, but the bass is staying on F to create a bit of tension. Then we move to E minor, which is the 3 chord. And then finally we move to the A minor, which is the 6 chord. So we haven't even stated the 1 chord yet. We've gone 4, 5, 3, and then 6. The harmony avoids landing on that 1 chord. It's creating a more open, softer feel, rather than crashing in on that tonic to state the key in that obvious way. It's way more subtle and sophisticated. Now as we move into the pre-chorus, you'll notice a sudden shift to E flat major 7 and then A flat major 7, which sounds like a 1 to 4 progression in a new key. But rather than thinking of it as a key change, it's more of a brief moment where they've chosen a few chords outside the key, and then we jump straight back into the chord progression that we did in the verse, but this time for the chorus. Okay, so moving to the bridge, which is bar 46 on your chart. Now this is where the real setup for the key change happens. We've just finished the chorus on an A7, and suddenly the harmony starts moving in gospel style steps. You might remember from the previous lesson how we looked at gospel chord movement and how new chords are set up by playing a chord a semitone or half step above or even below a new chord. Now in this song it's from above. So if we look at the chords here in the bridge, we're actually trying to target G to start with, that G13, twice. We're actually preceding it with an A flat major 7 chord first, so, and it does that twice. And then it does that down a semitone, so G flat to F. We then move down another tone to E flat, voiced as an E flat 11. And this is where we get a really nice turnaround that brings us to the new key. Now this is what we call a 2-5-1, where we play the 2 chord, then the 5 chord, and finally the 1 chord of the new key we're moving to. So we're moving to D flat here. So a 2-5-1 would be E flat to start with, then we'd move to A flat, and then finally we'd resolve to the D flat. But just like earlier in the song, we still don't sit on the 1 chord. Instead, the harmony does what it did earlier on. It moves between the 4, 5, 3 minor and 6 minor chords. So tantalizingly, we're still not allowing the listener to hear that 1 chord. Now in the outro, which is bar 62 on the chart, we get one last beautiful gospel-inspired sequence. We start on A major 7, and that slides down a semitone to A flat 13. Now think of this as a gospel style chord movement. Then we finally land on D flat major, that new tonic. Now to create a turnaround so we can keep repeating this, the harmony moves briefly to the 6 chord, voiced as a B flat 7 flat 9 chord, before sliding back down a semitone to A flat major and repeating the whole sequence. Now this gives us a gorgeous 4-bar loop where at last the listener is finally allowed to hear the tonic of the new key we're in. Now that's the genius of this song. We go on a real journey with it. For the majority of the song, we're in the key of C, but without it being too obviously stated. And then only when we've changed key are we allowed to hear the tonic chord, giving us a sense of arriving at the home key. It's a masterclass in how to write a key change. Now I really hope you enjoy learning this track. It's a really cool bass line to play, and even if you're not into the harmony side of things, it's just great to check out what Chris Brody-Brown played and learn some of his licks. So what have we learnt from Leave the Door Open? Now this song is a masterclass in delayed resolution. Rather than stating the 1 chord very obviously, the harmony spends most of its time circling round the 4, 5, 3 and 6 chords. It floats around and creates tension from the get-go. What key are we in? Where is this going? Now the song is full of lush, extended chords, gospel chord movement, borrowed harmony, and finally a key change that feels completely natural because it's been so carefully set up. And what an amazing song to finish this series on. We've been on a nice little journey across these 4 lessons. We've looked at the concept of diatonic harmony, using triads, and then adding sevenths. We've then moved on to secondary dominance, gospel chord movement, and key changes, all whilst learning some of the coolest soul and R&B bass lines around. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this. The more you understand the harmony, the more freedom you'll have on the bass. Now, I want to thank you for joining me in this series. I hope you found it helpful. If you've enjoyed watching, this is a little taster of what we get up to in my Bass Legends online class. We study the bass playing greats and break down some of their most iconic bass lines. Plus, each semester we invite a true bass legend to join us for an up-close and personal chat, sharing their tips, tricks and insights. Now, when you grab the free transcription book and backing tracks using the link below, I'll send you some information about my bass classes too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.